You are listening to the Mom to Mom podcast, hosted by Stephanie Sinclair, founder and owner of How to Mom. This podcast is meant to empower women and bring the community together through storytelling and education. During these episodes, you will hear stories of triumph, heartache, and hope. You will hear time-tested tips and tricks shared by mamas and women. You will hear a variety of birth stories that will resonate with all birthing families, advice from professionals who have dedicated their teachings to pregnancy, birth, and moms. Here, you will find encouragement, support, and community, because we are your community, and we are so happy to have you. Now, on to today's episode. Hi to all the Mom to Mom podcast listeners and the How to Mom community. I am so excited to have you listening to today's episode. I was just checking my teeth because I'm drinking a protein shake with chia seeds. So if you're watching this on YouTube, I probably have stuff stuck in my teeth. Today, I am not going to be interviewing another party. It is not necessarily going to be a birth stories episode, nor a professional interview. It is going to be a conversation with just me, myself, and I. I know that in the past, I have shared my birth stories with all of you, which I love doing and appreciate all of you for listening. Those birth stories, like all of yours, of course, mean so much to me, and just, having this platform to be able to share them means a lot to me. But I was inspired earlier this week to share more about my journey and story prior to conceiving, or the journey to conceive. I was inspired by a friend and a client of How to Moms, and just, sharing our stories so that others can not feel so alone, first of all, but also if others are in a similar situation or might be starting on this unique journey, that they have like real life stories to listen to, or real life people who have been through it, and not just, kind of your provider sitting across from you in a doctor's office. Obviously not that my opinion or story is equal to what your provider is sharing with you, but I don't know, just from somebody who went through infertility, I wanted other women's stories. I wanted to hear from women who had been in a situation like I had been in, and not just kind of hearing the medical definitions, so to speak. So, like most of you know, or all of you probably know by now, I went through an infertility journey for all of my babies. But a friend and client just recently shared a reel and some stories on Instagram about her journey through IUI. And it got such a huge response because so many people don't know what that journey looks like, or they have questions about that journey, or maybe they are facing a similar journey. And it just really inspired me because I think with, obviously being a mom now for 10 plus years and being in the birth space, sometimes I take for granted or assume that other people know what this journey looks like. And that's just not the case, especially for those that are not in this, birth space. So to take you back, I always grew up with a mama who had terrible period cramps. So it was inevitable, or it felt like it would be inevitable, that both my sister and I would have the same experience, which of course we did. And the cause behind our heavy, painful periods and cramps was a disease which is called endometriosis. It is where the lining of your uterus grows elsewhere. And when I say elsewhere, I mean it can grow a lot of places, not only in other organs, but in your rectum. Um, and it's just a really, really painful disease. And it's something that directly affects fertility. And it's something that the public can't see, right? And so you always hear about these types of diseases and how they can be difficult because it's not like a broken arm where you can point to it and say, I broke my arm. I obviously can't use my arm. A disease like endometriosis, which can be debilitating for a lot of people, is hard to understand and it's hard to explain. But at least, at minimum, every time I had a cycle, even when I was young, 12, 13, 14, I was out of commission completely for one full day, at least, at minimum, meaning I could not get out of bed, terrible cramps. I remember thinking, like, there's no way labor is going to be difficult for me because I've been dealing with these cramps for so many years. That's not the case, but that's what I always told myself. And so I was put on birth control very early on, well before I was sexually active, in an attempt to decrease my cramps and the pain that I experienced. I would lose a lot of blood. I would do a lot of bleeding during my cycles, so much so that sometimes I would even get lightheaded and feel really, really sick. And of course, experience the cramping. And so it was through kind of this 10 plus year span of being on birth control that I would skip periods. I would only cycle about every 3 to 4 months. And I was able to do that with the medication. Obviously, when you're young, especially, a teenager, and you are able to avoid pain and situations like I was in, you don't really question it. You just, get the information, take it, follow it, don't question it, don't look further into it. There just wasn't a lot of information out there anyway. For me on this as a teenager. And so I remained on birth control for, like I said, 10 plus years. Even on birth control, I would have really bad episodes. And I think by the time I was married and ready to start trying to conceive, I had, I think, 5, 6, maybe 7 laparoscopic surgeries where they would go in through my belly button and 2 incisions, one on each hip, basically, or sides of my abdomen. And they would use laser to get rid of this lining that had grown in these places that it was not supposed to. Insert a lot of scar tissue. Anyways, fast forward, because I was trying to make this episode not so long. Fast forward, once Brian and I got married, I was ready to become a mom, like instantly. I remember on our honeymoon, I was like, "Woo, we're gonna get pregnant on our honeymoon." Knowing kind of in the back of my mind, I was like, I don't know if I can just get pregnant this easy. I don't know why. I just always kind of figured that it was probably going to be pretty difficult for me. Not only because of the experience that I had had, but also because fun fact, my older sister is the first conceived Clomid baby here in Minnesota. And that was, 40 some plus years ago. So my mom did have a little bit of trouble conceiving with my sister. She did not have trouble conceiving me, which is something that you hear often kind of in the medical field, that like if you have fertility issues with your first, but then you get pregnant and have a baby, the likelihood that you will struggle again decreases. Unfortunately, that was not the case for me. So anyways, Brian and I just tried to have a lot of fun, and we practiced a lot for the first year and a half of our marriage. The reason why I also knew I was probably not going to get pregnant is because I didn't cycle. Once I went off of birth control, I just didn't get a period any longer. The only time I was able to get a period is when I was on birth control and I would take the, white pills for 7 days or whatever it was, that I would actually cycle. So I think I went a year and a half without having a period. I kept going to the doctor that I went to for years, who did those multiple surgeries. And I just kind of felt like my requests, my desires were getting kind of blown off. I just had to keep trying. Nothing was really taken very seriously until I went in at a year and a half and I said, nothing's happening. I'm not getting a period. And I want to get pregnant, yesterday. And so he did do an ultrasound, a vaginal ultrasound, and they were talking to me as if I had been diagnosed with PCOS in the past, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, which basically means you have cysts all around your ovaries. It's really a terrible analogy, but basically the ultrasound tech says that your ovaries look like chocolate chip cookies. But the chocolate chips are cysts. Okay, you guys, we're going to take just a brief break so I can tell you all about an amazing company, Body Ready Method. Body Ready Method is an amazing company that offers pregnancy and postpartum programs. I urge you to take a look at this, especially if you are wanting to stay active during your pregnancy and prepare for labor and delivery. This is also a great program to help heal and recover your body post-birth. You can go to howtomom.com/links and follow the Body Ready Method link from there. Okay, back to today's episode. So that, in addition to my endometriosis, were both playing a role and having a direct effect as to why I was not conceiving. So not only was I not having a cycle, and then I wasn't maturing eggs, and then I wasn't able to ovulate the eggs because the eggs couldn't get from my ovaries out of my ovaries because of these cysts. But I also had endometriosis. So I had all of this growth in places preventing, if an egg did mature and if an egg did ovulate, it wasn't really able to go anywhere. This is all my non-legal journey conversation of what I came to understand. And this was a long time ago. So anyway, I went back into my doctor's office and I said, what do I got to do? I want to get pregnant. He handed me a prescription for Clomid, and that was it. No direction, no conversation of when I was supposed to use Clomid, at what point in that journey are we supposed to have intercourse, just no guidance at all. I was so confused. I also remember getting into my car, and some of you might be able to relate to this, some of you might not, but I got to my car and I called my sister-in-law, who is a mom, and also a nurse. And I felt really vulnerable in this moment where I had these pills in my hand and I thought, am I going, and this is going to sound so crazy, am I going against God's will? Am I not supposed to be a mom? You hear that from a lot of religious people, right? Of interfering, if you were just to relax and, just keep trying, things will happen for you. And I let those comments get to me. And I felt like, am I doing something wrong? Am I going against what God has planned for me? And this is why I love my sister-in-law so much. She was like, that's bullshit. You are not going against anybody's plan. You might just need a little bit of help. I love her. She always gets me through, in the best of ways. So I knew right then and there I was not just going to start this Clomid and hope for the best, because I didn't want to introduce another medication and miss an opportunity, and it just felt so icky and wrong. And so I did some research and I found another group, another provider who I met with, and the approach was much different. There was a plan, there was education. We needed to do another surgery to kind of basically what they say is clear me out, get rid of all of the endometriosis. Also get rid of any cysts that, might play a role in my fertility journey. And they also did a procedure where they insert dye into my fallopian tubes to make sure that there was no blockage for that egg to travel or eggs to travel. So after doing that, I was cleared to start a cycle and to attempt to get pregnant. I was very excited, very naive, thinking it was going to happen right away. I literally at this point was dying to become pregnant because it had felt like so long, such a long journey. All my friends were getting pregnant at the time, and that's literally all I wanted was to get pregnant. The first medication that I took takes about 10 to 14 days to initiate and start a period cycle. So by the time you actually start the journey of trying to conceive, it's a good month out because I had to wait. I had to get my period. And then obviously we had to wait for the prime time to grow and ovulate. And so did that, had my cycle, and then started my first dosage of Clomid. And at some point, again, you guys, this was a long time ago, but at some point you go back into the doctor's office, they do another vaginal ultrasound to see if you have follicles, to see if any of your eggs have matured enough to be ovulated. Unfortunately, that first round, I had 0 eggs that had matured to the measurement that they need to in order to move forward. So that first month was a bust. Did not work. And I felt a little bit discouraged, but they had a plan and they told me that for whatever reason, my body did not respond to Clomid. And so right away, they're like, let's not just try that again. Let's switch it up. And so I went on a different medication that essentially was the same thing as Clomid, except for they had better success with patients who have PCOS. They would see better results with patients who had PCOS if they attempted this medication versus Clomid. So we went right into our second cycle, took the medication to have a period, got my period, and then took the new medication. I'm trying to remember, Fumera, I believe it was. And what's funny is when I was listening to Liz on Instagram at Hey Liz Kruger, she talked about how you have to go to different pharmacies to get these different medications, which is exactly what I remember. I actually think I remember ordering Fumera online, and then my ovulation medication I had to order from another location, and the insurance policy that I was on then did not cover any of the medications. So, and it all has to be fresh. So you have to do it every single cycle. And so I took that medication, Fumera, and I was so excited to go into my ultrasound because they said I had mature eggs that could be ovulated. And so they sent me home and with strict instructions of when and how many times to have intercourse. We did not attempt IUI that round. We just used the medication to get a period. We used the medication to mature my eggs, and we used an injection to ovulate. And so I was so excited. We had lots of intercourse, prayed a lot. We were hoping for a baby. You have to obviously wait a good amount of time, 2+ weeks before you can even test. And of course, I think I kept testing I just am so excited. I can't wait. Side note, if you've ever taken a negative pregnancy test, or I'm sorry, I should say this. If you've ever taken a positive pregnancy test, you do not have to usually wait the full 2 to 3 minutes. If it's positive, it's going to show up pretty quickly. But when you take negative test after negative test after negative test, you set that timer. And every time those 3 minutes feel like forever, you see that there's no 2 lines, but you pray that just maybe that second line will show up. And it just never did. I went up to my parents' cabin, tried to just, let it be, even though that's the only thing consuming. I remember being really great with my nutrition that month. I remember not drinking any alcohol, really just trying to be, as healthy as possible to try and conceive. I woke up, I remember this like it was yesterday. I woke up to my period, a natural period, because my body actually did what like most women's bodies do on a monthly basis. But of course, I was devastated. Not only did I wake up to a period, which I hate, I think a lot of you can relate to that, but that also meant that I wasn't pregnant. It didn't work. And money was out the door yet again. So I was very, very frustrated. I remember being very angry. I remember being very upset. Again, I know that so many people go through such longer, bigger, harder journeys, but at the time, I was just thinking about what we were going through and what we wanted. And I just remember being so upset. Even to the point where I was like upset with my late grandma. Like, why aren't you helping me? Why aren't you letting us get pregnant? Like, what the heck is going on? My sister was getting married not long after that second cycle. And then I think we had a trip on the books. I was not in a good headspace. Mentally, I was really struggling. And so my husband and I sat down and we decided we were going to take a pause, that we weren't going to move forward that next month. It's just a lot. The medication, I did not feel well when I was on that medication. I always gained a lot of weight when I was on that medication. I was very consumed with the obsession of getting pregnant. And so we decided we needed to take a break, or better yet, I needed to take a break. It was at that time I actually started writing a lot. I always had planned on publishing a book about my journey. That never happened. It comes more through like my blog posts now. But I always said I would title my book, "It's Not You, It's Me." And the feeling and the sadness and the heaviness that comes with looking at your husband and saying, you could get pregnant just fine. There's nothing wrong with you or your sperm. It's me. And that's a lot of burden to carry. And it was really tough. We had a fun couple of months. My sister, like I said, my sister got married. We traveled to the East Coast. And then when we got back, it was like September-ish, we decided we were going to move forward and do another cycle. And this time, because I seriously, I love this clinic that helped me get pregnant. They said, okay, that didn't work. We need to add something else. And that was when we had heard about IUI, which is insemination, where they actually insert the sperm, increasing your chances of getting pregnant by, I think, like 10 or 11%. Don't quote me. It wasn't that much more, but I remember thinking that's a lot considering that this hasn't been working for us. So it was during that cycle, I took the medication to have a cycle, and then I took the medication to mature my eggs. Went in, I was told that I had 3 mature eggs. I think it was 3 or 4 mature eggs. I was instructed to go home and instructed a specific time to do the ovulation injection. When you do IUI, you are also instructed to still have intercourse. Like, you just want to give your body as many chances as possible to conceive. And then I think it was within 12 hours. Oh, I can't remember if it was within 12 hours or 36 hours. But even if your clinic is not open, these physicians are amazing because they go in on the weekends, on the holidays, because it's all about your cycle, right? And so if they say, okay, you have X amount of mature eggs, go home, we're going to ovulate you at this time, and then you need to come back into the clinic at this time for your IUI procedure. Fun fact too is obviously you need the sperm, right? And so I think there's a couple different ways clinics do this, but how we did it was you had to bring the sperm in with you for IUI. It could only have been ejaculated within that hour. It needed to remain body room temperature, and there was nothing that could be used to help ejaculation, meaning there couldn't be lubrication, lotions, intercourse, things of that nature. It was like sorry, Mom, if you're listening, but like a good old hand job. And so we came home and did the deed as many times as we were instructed to. And then that next morning, this is such a funny story, you guys, and I will never forget it. The next morning, we collected the sperm at home. We did it at home, got into the car. Brian had to go to work that day, but he was coming with me to the doctor's office, but we drove separately so that he could just continue on to work. I put the sperm, which was in a cup, in between my breasts in my sports bra to keep it warm temperature. It was kind of chilly on that September or October morning. I get in my car, you guys, epic Stephanie move, no gas. Like, oh my gosh. So we go to the gas station. I stay in the car with the sperm in my boobs. Brian pumps the gas and we're like, we got to get there. Hopefully there's no traffic. Get to the doctor's office. They legit, like, you sit on the table. They inject the sperm vaginally, which is considered the IUI procedure. And then, no joke, you guys, they prop your hips up. So to encourage the sperm to get to the eggs. I remember Brian giving me a kiss and saying, we didn't know that I had to wait like 20 minutes with my hips propped up. So Brian gave me a kiss, went off to work. I said, okay, I'm going to lay here and pray I get pregnant and I'll talk to you later. We were very, very lucky to have had everything line up and go smoothly that day. Again, that 2-ish weeks that you have to wait feels like forever. I thought 1000% I was getting my period about 2 weeks later. I had severe cramping, much like period cramps. I was extremely emotional. I, no joke, had 2 back-to-back baby showers that weekend, which I was so happy for my friends. And I always would say, like, I'm happy for you. I'm just not happy for me. But it was so hard and conflicting because I was not in a good space. And then to go to these baby showers and pretend like I was and congratulate them, but, you know, feel really upset myself was just I just remember that weekend being really difficult. I was like, I'm getting my freaking period. I know it. I'm emotional. I'm cramping. I was on my way to the second baby shower and I had to pull over because I was such a wreck. And I called Brian and I was like, I don't think I can go. Like, I don't think I can go. I'm so upset. And he, of course, being the amazing man and husband that he is, talked me down and said, you know, just try and put our journey aside and go and celebrate your friend. I know you're happy for her. Just go and celebrate her. And so I did. And I had a cocktail. I had a cocktail at the baby shower and I was like, F it. This isn't working. Came home. It was a Sunday night. I remember Brian came home and he was like, let's take a pregnancy test. And I was like, nope, I don't even want to. I'm so sick and tired of taking pregnancy tests. I'm so sick and tired of negative pregnancy tests. I know I'm not pregnant. I know I'm getting my period and I'm just pissed and I'm over it at this point. And he was like, let's just take a test. Hey guys, it's Stephanie Sinclair, founder and owner of How To Mom. I'm just interrupting today's episode to make sure you are well aware of all that How To Mom offers. We, of course, are a community and a support group for all moms at all stages of life, but we also offer a large variety of services that I wanted to make sure you are well aware of. We offer birth doula services, both in person or online support. We have birth support groups with different birth packages to choose from. We also provide placenta encapsulation services, lactation services from our lactation counselors. We also offer postpartum services, birth planning assistance, belly casting. We have a registered dietitian, nutritionist. We also offer a variety of photography services from birth, newborn, and family packages. We truly have it all here at How To Mom. So please don't hesitate to reach out today to have a free consult and help us find the best way to support you in your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum journey. Now back to today's episode. You guys, I took that test. I will never, ever, ever, ever forget that moment. This was like before, you did everything on Instagram. So I look back and I wish I would have videotaped a lot more of it, but probably had like a BlackBerry at the time. I took the pregnancy test, you guys, and within seconds, it was positive. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. I was so, so excited. So it was a success. Everything worked, but it was a journey to get there. Just to add to that story too, I was at work. We were about 12 weeks pregnant with Mackenzie at the time. I was finally starting to feel a little bit better, finally had some energy back. Was just kind of getting to a place where I was really excited to start sharing the news because, all I read online was like, once you get to 12 weeks, you're good. I remember getting up, going to the bathroom. This was when I worked in the legal field. Went to the bathroom, stood up, and the toilet was full of blood. And I just remember thinking, that's not good. I didn't have any cramping, no other symptoms. It's just the toilet was full of blood. I kind of initially started panicking, started crying. A coworker saw me. We chatted. She was able to kind of calm me down so that I could get in the car and drive to the hospital. And I just remember thinking the whole way there, this can't be happening. Like I already had so many struggles, or at least in my mind, I thought I had so many struggles. Because I say that not because I have to explain it, but also because I don't want anybody listening who has been through a journey that has been so much harder than ours, so much more expensive than ours, so many more losses than what we experienced. I just don't want to overshadow that because I know we were very, 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 very lucky, even with the journey we were on. But I do just remember thinking, I already have had so much trouble getting pregnant. Like, you cannot be taking this baby from me. I called my midwife group and they actually had an opening at their clinic. And so they were like, you know what? Don't go to the ER. Just come to clinic. I remember they used a Doppler and they tried to find a heartbeat. It took a while because again, I was only 12 weeks. And it was like the longest 2 minutes of my life, but they ended up finding a heartbeat and they were like, she sounds really healthy. And I was like, well, what do you think the bleeding's from? Like, it wasn't just spotting, like it was a lot of bleeding. And they were like, we don't really know. It was kind of unexplained. They thought maybe implantation, but again, looking back, like that would have been very late for implantation bleeding. Although I was confused, I was also just like happy. Like, I'm not going to obsess over it. The fact that she's okay, the fact that they heard a healthy heartbeat, like I was just going to go with that. I ended up birthing Mackenzie. She was my beautiful miracle baby. And once I birthed my placenta, they were like, whoa, this placenta looks very different. It was multi-lobed and it had, I think, 6 vessels. And so the thought is that potentially more than just one of my mature eggs fertilized or attempted to fertilize and just didn't complete the process. And so that bleeding at 12 weeks was my body kind of shedding potentially triplets. And that story makes sense to me. It doesn't have to make sense to anybody else, but it makes sense to me because then fast forward 3.5 years later, we decided that we were going to try to conceive again. Or we had always been trying to conceive. Again, I was not really getting my period on a regular basis. I remember getting my period once when Mackenzie was like 3 months old and I was breastfeeding her full time. So I thought, wow, my body is really, backwards because that's when you're not supposed to cycle. So I wasn't getting regular periods. I had a surgery in between Mackenzie and conceiving the twins because I had a severely large cyst on my right ovary that required emergency surgery because they were worried that it was going to rupture, which could have caused even more damage and issues. But things weren't working again. We had this thought that maybe we could conceive naturally after going through all of that with Mackenzie, but it just wasn't happening. I was ready, I would say long before Mackenzie was 3.5, but Brian and I had to be on the same page to go through it together again. I didn't really realize, I guess he said it to me a lot, but he was worried that we were going to have multiples. And I always thought like, yeah, maybe, and that would be awesome, but not really thinking that that would happen, especially with everything that we had been through. So he was finally on board. And we decided to go through the exact same journey we went through with Mackenzie because it worked so well. I was shocked and pleasantly surprised when we went in for that first vaginal ultrasound. Because with Mackenzie, we had to do multiple ultrasounds. Like, nope, the eggs aren't quite mature yet. Come back in 2 days. Nope, they're not quite where we want them. Come back in 2 more days. Like, we didn't want to ovulate the eggs until they were at a good measurement. With the twins, because we kind of had an idea of what my cycle looked like, we gauged it off of that. So I did the medication to have a cycle. I did the medication to mature my eggs. I went with the Femera again. And the very first vaginal ultrasound, they were like, yep, your eggs are beautiful, mature, ready to go. I had 3 mature eggs and 1 that was like kind of on the border. I was like, whoa, this cannot be, like, things are going way too smooth, no hiccups. I was almost like, there's no way I'm going to get pregnant the very first month. Everything's going too well. They sent us home. I actually remember my doctor saying, get pregnant, but not too pregnant. So I say, like, she totally jinxed us. Went home, same instructions, had intercourse, or did the injection for ovulation, did the scheduled intercourse, did the scheduled hand job, brought the sperm into the clinic for IUI. Brian wasn't even there when I conceived the twins. He had to work again that day. He was home so that I could collect. Off to the doctor's appointment. I went by myself. He went to work. Same procedure, IUI procedure. Propped my hips up, laid there for 20 minutes. That's when the doctor said, get pregnant, but not too pregnant, because we knew there was multiple eggs. And that was that. And I left thinking there's no way I'm going to get pregnant. This went way too smooth. It was literally within, I would say, probably 8 to 12 hours. I was like, yep, I'm pregnant. I don't know how I knew. I did not know that with Mackenzie. With Mackenzie, remember, I thought for sure I was getting my period. I had a busy night that night after the IUI procedure. And like, it was like when I would sit down, I was like, oh my God, something's happening in my body. Like, I could just feel it. I was like, things are working, things are happening. I think I'm going to be pregnant. Went into the doctor's office. Well, I think I got the positive pregnancy test after 2 weeks. And I was like, oh my God, it did work. It did happen. I couldn't believe it. Went to the doctor's office. They did the blood work, and my numbers, HGC, HCG, I don't know. I'll have to look this up. Sorry. My numbers were like 3 to 4 times what they were with Mackenzie. And I was like, oh my gosh, no, this can't be real, but maybe it's real. Which is an indicator that you conceived multiples, because obviously your hormones are increasing rapidly anyway, especially when you have multiple babies. And so, yeah, it was only 1 round of treatment that we got pregnant with the twins. I call them our 2-for-1. Mackenzie was far more expensive. The twins we conceived right away, and Brian wasn't even there. So I can obviously tell this story with laughter looking back now, 10 and 7 years ago. I feel so lucky and blessed to not only have had the providers that I had, who provided me with the education, who provided me with the optimal ability to conceive. And I am just so happy to report that my babies are IUI success stories. So anyways, just wanted to share that with you guys. Wanted to dive in a little bit deeper about what our fertility and IUI journey looks like. I hope you enjoyed listening today. I hope that you maybe feel less alone if this is a journey that you have been on. Maybe it's answered some questions that you might have. Of course, as always, please feel free to reach out to me and ask any questions. I am an open book. I enjoy and love to share our story, and I think it's only of a benefit to share if you feel comfortable and called to do so to help others. So thanks for listening today, you guys. Have a good one. We'll catch you on the next episode. All right, you guys, that is it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed. If so, please subscribe to our podcast, comment, share, give us feedback. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen, and we will see you next time.